Very good. We will call the finance meeting to order and we will begin with the roll call. Lauren.
Commissioner Nieder.
Here.
Commissioner Fasci.
I'm here.
Commissioner Eichelberger.
Present.
All right. Is there any public comment? If you would like to make public comment and are on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature. Does not appear we have anyone in the room interested in making public comment at this time. Is there anyone online, Lauren?
There is a Charles Thompson online.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Thompson. If you have any questions and want to ask, please use or make a comment, please use the raise your hand. Otherwise, we will begin then with the approval of the meeting minutes from the July 3rd meeting. I'll entertain a motion for that, please.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will go into the topic of discussion today, which is the Financial Analysis Committee presentation. And we have with us Keri Finkenbinder and Ron Snow from our Finance Department. Welcome, folks. And I'll just turn it over to you. And Dana, I apologize.
Oh, no, no, that's fine.
And Logan, you're not in the hot seat. So yeah.
All I was gonna do was introduce them.
So welcome to the July 17, 2024 Financial Analysis Committee presentation. Today we're going to present you with the first of a series of 3 presentations. Today's presentation is going to focus on our 5-year projections that will cover 2024 through 2028. We'll be back with you again in August to give you a preliminary presentation on our 2025 budget. And then we'll be back again in October for an update on the 2025 budget, as well as an update on the 5-year projections. So keep in mind that our projections, you'll see exact numbers in today's presentation, but these numbers are truly a midpoint of a projection range. Some of the highlights from today's presentation will be focusing on the millage increase that happened for 2024 and how that has impacted our financials and has impacted how we will be able to use our fund balance management one-time monies in 24 and 25 and possibly 26.
Ron, can you hold on a minute, please? Or wait for the slides. Okay. Oh, okay, sorry. Good.
Our departments have done an excellent job of containing costs in a time where the cost of goods and services are increasing. And also we're anticipating the second bond issue for the P25 project here sometime in the 4th quarter of 2024. So this slide here is a comparison of our 2024 year-end projections. So we're comparing where we were anticipating 24 being back in January to where we now see 2024 being as of May 30th. Historically, that first column would have been October. However, we amended the 24 budget back in January. And at that time, we updated our real estate tax projection. No other numbers were updated at that time other than real estate tax dollars. So the first line there, the beginning unassigned fund balance, has increased about $950,000. And that is directly attributed to MH receiving additional revenues in December of 23, which allowed us to reduce the amount of county subsidy to MH. On the revenue side, as I mentioned before, real estate taxes are showing no change because we updated that projection back in January. Now, on the other revenues, we are anticipating an increase of about $4.6 million. And of that 4.6, we are seeing about a $1.8 million increase in prison housing revenue for housing Huntington County inmates, as well as we saw an increase in the federal reimbursement rate for the federal inmates who are housing at the prison. In addition, we've seen about $1 million increase in our interest revenue. And that is mainly because spending for the county grant program has not occurred as fast as we had initially anticipated happening. So there's some additional cash we're getting interest on. On the expense side, expenses are up about $1.3 million, which is 1%, and that's well within our projection range. On the operating side, operating expenses are up $600,000 or 2%. I had mentioned earlier, departments are doing an excellent job of cost containment when the cost of our things we're purchasing, goods and services, are going up much more than 2%.
Ron, I don't want to interject too much, but I do have to pause you there and just do a shout out to everyone in the county. I mean, that is just really great work. Thank you all for that. And unfortunately, we got a lot of the year left to go, so it's we're not easing up. But and thank you for tracking that so well and closely from your team.
Everyone has taken this very seriously.
Yeah,
You know,
Agreed.
which is great. It's so far it's been an epic performance. So
Capital is up about $1.1 million as well, and that's directly related to projects in 2023 that either didn't get started on time or didn't get finished, and they're rolling into 2024. Then the main change in our projections is the fund balance management line. So back in January, we anticipated using all $9.3 million of fund balance management to maintain 100 days of unassigned fund balance. With the increase in the millage rate, coupled with our other revenues being about $4.6 million higher than we expected, that is going to allow us to shift some of that fund balance management into subsequent years. So now we're anticipating needing to use about 1.8 million of the 9.3
wow.
to maintain 100 days. So that gives us some flexibility into 25 and maybe into 26.
That's fantastic.
yeah. You said 1.8 million.
1.8 million is our current projection.
Instead of the 9.
Yes.
That had been, yeah.
So next we're going to show you the 5-year projections. And this is a full snapshot of those projections. So Keri's going to take over and she's going to break the projections down into smaller pieces. And that's going to give you a more in-depth look at how we develop these projections.
So for our revenue projections, we estimate real estate taxes increasing about 1.5% annually, and this is due to natural growth. We also anticipate a decrease in interest revenue, and this is due to spending of the county grant program funding as projects continue. We also have departmental fees decreasing in 2027, and this is when the prison is expected to no longer be housing Huntington County inmates.
Keri, I know I reached out to you and to the warden on that, and they are going to continue to try and house other counties.
Yeah.
However, there's just nothing as firm as we had going into this year. So
then for our salary and benefit projections, we are assuming that there's no wage scale adjustments in 2024. We are estimating about a 4% increase in salaries per year from 2025 through 28 and 2% increase in benefits. To develop our salary projections, we look at historical trends. So this does include addition of new employees and turnover.
And one question, it appears that the budget from the state, although we haven't had a lot of time to really go down through it, flat funding, are you all projecting flat funding within this budget from the state?
Yes, so in our subsidy, when we get to the subsidy projections, we assume flat funding.
Okay, thank you.
For our operating projections, we are assuming an average increase of 2% per year for 2026 through 2028. We are projecting a decrease in 2025, but this is due to grant-related expenses, so they do have an offsetting revenue. So the grants are expected to be completed by the end of 2024. We also have the completion of the feasibility study in 2024. However, whatever comes out of this study, we do not have that included in our projections.
Understood. We don't know what those answers are yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we also have court-related costs are increasing in 2024, and this is due to ongoing homicide cases. We're also continuing to see increases in contracts and supplies departments have done a great job of containing the costs, but the cost of these are just outweighing that.
Keri, unfortunately, in Cumberland County, we've had successive years of some serious homicides and expenses related to convicting or trying those cases. Can you tell me roughly, do you know, has it been consistently over the last 5 years that we've had those types of very large, very expensive cases? I know sometimes they go in a 2-year cycle because they carry into the following year.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'll take it for you.
Okay.
It does ebb and flow, and it is very dependent. Some of the expenses flow in the year that they happen. So some of the costs, say, for the district attorney's office in the investigation stage are high. In other years, it could be the public defenders that's causing the pressure point and some other related costs from having an increased costs related to the courts. So it does ebb and flow, and we kind of look at it, I don't want to say we try to guess. It's an educated guess during the budget, but a lot of cases also never make it to court. So it is a risk area, for lack of a better word, but I think we've done a good job of that's part of what the contingency is for, right? So we pull it out of the departments, and then if it's needed, we put it back in.
Yeah, and Dana, just in your tenure over it seems like there have been several, one a year, at least for the last 5 years, that have been higher profile or more complex cases. Is that a safe?
Yeah, I think we always have them, but it ebbs and flows. So yes, there have been more in the last 5 years. And then we may go into a time period where there aren't any, and then all of a sudden there's some high ones back. When you look at the long cycle, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But are we up in general? Yes.
Let's hope they stop.
I hope.
We need to plan either way. Thank you.
So then for our subsidy projections, we have an average increase of about 3% per year. Like I said earlier, this assumes flat state funding. And we also have the second bond issue in 2024 with payments beginning in 2025. So you see that increase in our projection for 25. The main drivers of subsidy changes are changes in salary and benefits, service contracts, and federal and state revenue. So our capital projections are developed using departmental 10-year plans, and we had anticipated 2024 through 2026 being higher capital years, just with increased projects and increased funding available from the county grant program. Historically, our average capital is about $3 to $4 million. For our transfers and debt projections, the debt changes are in accordance with amortization schedules. And like I said, the 911 bond is shown in our subsidy, and that's because the debt payments are budgeted in the 911 fund, not in the general fund. Since there's not enough 911 revenue, these eventually come back as general fund subsidy. Our total outstanding debt currently is about $31.4 million with annual payments of 4.2. Once we issue this new bond, our outstanding debt will be about 46.4 million and annual payments of 5.3 million.
That's estimating about a $15 million bond.
15 million. Thank you.
For our additional impacts, this section, the county grant program allocation is developed using what we have projected in capital. So this is an offsetting the expenses. So this can shift depending on the timing of projects. Our fund balance management is also adjusted to maintain a minimum of 100 days of fund balance. This can also fluctuate depending on changes in revenue and expense. And we anticipate using all of the fund balance management by 2026. And then the last piece is our unassigned fund balance. So we're projected to end 2024 around 32.3 million or 100 days of fund balance. So that fund balance management is maintaining the 100 days through 2025. Starting in 26 is when adjustments definitely need to occur. Using that fund balance management, though, it looks like our revenue and expense are keeping pace with each other, as you can see from the change in unassigned fund balance line. But on the next slide, we are removing that fund balance management to give a clearer picture of what the gap between revenue and expense is. And with that removed, we aren't even at 100 days in 2024. So that fund balance management is masking the decline in the out years. So the sooner changes made, the greater impact it has on the future.
Keri, I don't think that we can say, but if we had not done the tax increase, we would have used all of the fund
Yes.
balance
Yeah.
in this year.
Yes.
We are in a very, very different space now because of that millage change. It's giving us the flexibility to look at the out years and make a plan. And departments also are doing what they need to do to curb costs, like everything that's happening now is what you directed and is good. But we have some bad things happening and then rising costs and different things that are offsetting some of that, so.
Well, if our bond payments are going to be $5 million and our tax revenue is only going up by a couple $1 million, right there is a shortfall that we
Correct.
don't have.
Correct.
So.
And that may be a way we want to start talking and thinking about things when we have to add things. Well, how does that impact us? And do we need to think about how it's impacting our tax base instead of waiting until we start seeing the gap, right?
Right.
So we know that we're gonna do the debt issue. What is that in millage? If we look at it that way, it could be beneficial or
Mhm.
other other revenue increases.
All right, so this is a visual of where we expect our 2024 unassigned fund balance to fall within the range of our fund balance policy. The green zone is the optimal range we'd like to see our unassigned fund balance fall within. In that green zone, we are meeting the cash flow needs of the general fund and also meeting the cash flow needs of the other funds that rely on the general fund to cover their costs until reimbursement happens at a later time. At times we do dip down into the yellow zone, but when we do that, we always want to have a plan to build our unassigned fund balance back up to above that 100-day mark. And currently with the millage increase, along with using about $1.8 million of that fund balance management, we do expect to be at the 100-day mark, which is the top of the yellow zone and the bottom of the green zone. So going forward, finance would like to evaluate the fund balance policy, our cash flow needs in the thermometer bands. The reason being is now we've had 4 years of CARES Act money, ARP money. So one-time monies, the increases in our revenues has also increased our expenses. We've had some changes in accounting standards for how we account for leases, how we account for subscription-based IT arrangements, which has also pushed up our revenues, pushed up our expenses. So we just want some time to analyze those things to see how they're affecting the policy. And then if we have any recommended changes, we'll be back in front of you with those recommendations.
Ron, the one thing that I think that folks have, I know based on some folks that have reached out to me, when they say, well, you have all this money, you're sitting on all this cash. And can you it's not like a private business where you perform a service and you're paid 15 or 30 days later. Can you give an average as to when sometimes some of the money comes back to us from the state?
It truly varies. I mean, it could be a turnaround where it's a couple weeks. It could be 6, 8 a year. It varies on the funding.
And that's what we do when we determine what level of fund balance we need. We kind of have an analysis that we do of all of the funds, because we pay all of our bills out of the general fund, so we guarantee it. So we're not holding payments in the other funds because we don't have cash on hand. But in doing that, it requires us to have a little bit more fund balance. And that is used to pay say, domestic relations for the reimbursement piece, or children and youth, and all of those different funds that are reimbursement based. And it can change in a minute on whether it's, we've had different changes at the state level where we used to get reimbursed in 60 days. Then one time we had a gift horse and they started reimbursing us in 15 days, and then they figured out what was doing to their cash flow, and then it bounced back. So we also have to think about how our other pressure points can impact us if there's a state budget impasse or they change their rules.
Right.
And so it's all of that rolls into it. But one thing that we do is we hold all of our money, not all of it, as much money as we can in the general fund for cash flow purposes. So unless it has to go into a restricted account, we keep it there, and that helps us keep the number of days that we need down.
I just think as to the layperson looking at the finances of the county, that's been one of the issues that I've tried to explain to folks when they call in and they say, well, I see you have all, you have this money that you're hanging on to. But it's a tricky cash flow to make sure that we can continue services, continue to pay staff, and that we don't have to have disruption to those services. So I appreciate all of the scrutiny that you guys are applying to this, because that's very important. And we need to pay our vendors, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
We cannot string them out in ways that sometimes we may be strung out on the other side. So
And currently we do have more cash than we normally would have because of the ARPA fund.
Right.
But that will be spent down eventually and won't be there. So our plan for how much fund balance we need is excluding that.
understood, because it's not, it will be gone.
It will be,
But it's been great while it lasted.
it has been, it's helped us with our interest rates.
Right, substantially.
Okay, so here we have a bar graph of our unassigned fund balance from 2019 through 2028. Now, as you see, starting in 2021, our unassigned fund balance has been on a slow decline. That slow decline would have been a more drastic decline without effective management of the CARES Act funding, the American Rescue Plan funding, to offset some of the cost of our operating needs and our capital needs. And again, in 2024, we are expected to be right at 100 days. And again, that's due to our millage increase, along with using some of the fund balance management dollars. Again, in 2025, we expect to be at 100 days. That is the top of the yellow zone there. But once we get to 2026, it falls off drastically. And that's where we're now used all of our fund balance dollars, and that gap between those revenues and expenses is truly shown clearly. So in summary, departments have done, as you mentioned, done a great job of containing costs when the cost of our goods and services are on increase. The 2024 millage rate increase improved our financial position and will allow us to maximize our remaining fund balance management dollars into 25 and 26. However, that structural imbalance between revenues and expenses will have to be addressed in the near future. So we have 2 more presentations coming up with you to talk about implementing additional cost containment measures or increasing recurring revenues, or a combination of both. So that next presentation is August 28th, and that will be a review of the preliminary 2025 budget.
And Ron, in that review in August, we will have a real good handle on the bond amount needed.
Yes.
For P25 and any other projects that we may be contemplating being a part of that, if there are any others.
Depending on timing, yes, we would still have time after that to add to the bond. In our information session, we were going to brief the board on the current estimate for public safety and the timeline. And so the timeline will probably be October, November timeframe is when we receive the cash for the bond. So backing it up, probably we would have till about September to make a final decision
Okay.
on whether we wanted to add something.
I mean, you still have to pay for it. I'm not,
Absolutely.
I'm not missing that point.
And you also have to make sure that the project's gonna be done in the right timeframe, and that's the biggest concern at the beginning of a project, because if something gets delayed, are we spending the bond
Right.
fast?
Again, and after looking at the initial glance of the projections, did reach out to Bob Shively at 911 to get a better handle, and he indicated they're working on that alternative for backup, and that hopefully that 3 million can be whittled down substantially if possible, and we just have to keep working every number.
Any additional questions for us?
I appreciated that getting the information in advance and having the time to come over and talk with you about it and go through it. It really helps when we get to this meeting. And I appreciate that very much in the very diligent approach being taken. It's really great. Thank you.
And, Jean, I'll just echo that because we've had a number of informational meetings each month to this point. It's good to see in this format. It's not as much of a surprise I feel like we've been monitoring all of this very, very closely. And I know that's taken a lot of work on Dana, you and your team's part. And we really appreciate that because it's leading to the results that we're hoping. So not all roses, but we're getting through another year or two here, so.
All right. Any other questions? All right, if there's nothing else, is there any other business to come before the board at this time? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Move to adjourn. So moved. We are adjourned.
This is my message.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yours?